What's up, guys? I'm Earl, the Rookie Woodworker, and today I'm going to go over another one of my storage issues, which is clamps. I have clamps stored everywhere throughout this shop. Some of them in locations that make sense, some of them in locations that don't make any sense at all. Some of them are just flat out in the way. Some of them are in spots that would be good real estate for stuff that I'm going to get in the future, and some of them are in spots that would be good real estate for stuff that's already in the shop and needs a home. So I'm going to get all of my clamps and consolidate all of them into one location right here in this cabinet. All right, to start this off, I'm going to remove the door, remove all the hardware to the door and anything inside the closet, because this closet is going to get all new guts. I'm going to remove the bottom part of this framework because we're going to go with rolling cabinets that roll across the floor. I wanted to make this closet a little bit deeper, but I'm limited on depth by the attic pull down stairs. So I can only add about 2¼ inches. So I'm just going to tack some 2x4s and then some 1x4s directly to the frame of this closet. It's not a lot more room, but it's a little more room. And more room equals more clamps, baby. And you can never have enough clamps, so the more room the better. I'm actually going to make the face of all these drawers out of one single sheet of plywood. That way all the grain lines up whenever all these drawers are in place. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out all 4 of those pieces right now. That way they're done and out of the way. Might be a little hard to tell, but I'm actually using another sheet of plywood as a straight edge when I'm doing this. I'm not actually that good at cutting a straight line. So from here I'm just going to build one drawer at a time. So I got to cut out the back and cut out the top and the bottom for it at this point. And from there it's pocket hole drilling time as I get into the first steps of assembly. And here's kind of a sneak peek at a miniature version of how this whole thing is going to work out. And you'll notice the bottom panel I'm screwing about 2½ inches from the bottom of the front face, and that is because I'm going to fit wheels under there. Then there will be some pocket holes going into the back panel. Oh man, what a disaster. Tighten up the clamp the next time, dummy. That's a little better. I've been using these corner clamps to try to get some square corners whenever I do this. And they work, but they're kind of in the way all the time, but they work. Okay, so what I got here is a 2½ inch wheel that I'm going to put between these two. And I'm using rollerblade wheels for this. You can pick these things up for, it's like an 8-pack for 20 bucks, or they're relatively cheap for what they are. So yeah, I'll put that through there, and I want it to stick about 1/4 inch out the bottom. So at a 2½ inch wheel, the halfway point is actually 1¼ inch. So you want to drill your holes through these pieces of wood to be an exact inch up from the bottom of the wood, and that will give you a 1/4 inch of stick out the bottom there, so that this thing can roll across the floor nice and easily in and out of that closet. I want to drill through both of these at once, so I'll use some CA glue and some tape to hold them together and line them up for the drill. And believe it or not, I'm going to go with pocket hole screws to hold these wheels on as well. The wheels I'm using for this are about 1 inch wide, so I'm going to use my setup blocks to hold this apart by 1 1/8 inches when I screw it together. Alright, so now it's time to install our wheels, but before we do that I'll do a quick little lesson on hardware. Now you'll notice that hardware, if I can get this thing to focus, you'll see like a rounded side to your washer that's kind of not flat, and then you'll see a side that's like perfectly flat. Now when you put your hardware together, see if I get this thing to focus again, you want your rounded side to be towards the head, and you want your flat side to go against your material that you're putting it against. Same thing on the other side. We're going to put our flat side in there towards the hole. And then I'm using a lock nut that has like a little plastic ring that's inside there, and that locks into the thread so that it won't back out. Whenever you're putting hardware on almost anything, you need to come up with some way for that nut to lock in, whether it's a star washer or a one of those split washers that'll keep the nut from backing off. That way your hardware don't fall apart in the long run. Then from the back here, I'm going to reach in and pocket hole screw a plate to the front bottom of these drawers. That way the clamps don't slide out. Alright, while I'm at the back here, I'm going to route out a 1/4 inch recess where I'm going to put a 1/4 inch piece of plywood in there. And that piece of plywood is really important for this thing because it's actually not only going to provide a backing for the whole drawer, but it's also going to hold everything square for the life of it. Without this, the whole drawer would just want to collapse whenever you pull and push on it. So this just makes the whole thing a lot more rigid. Then at the top, I'm going to work on the drawer guides. This is what's going to hold the drawer straight and stop it from flopping side to side in the closet. I was going to do this for the bottom as well, but I think the top is going to do just fine, as the drawers are going to hold each other in place pretty well too. And here's the moment of truth to see how the first drawer fits. And it fits like a glove. With this one done, we're going to move on to the next drawer, which is going to be built exactly the same way except for one part. And for that one part, I'm going to cut out some 1x1 material, and then I'm going to get some strips of 1/4 inch plywood, and then I'm going to put that 1/4 inch plywood between 1x1 material. And you see here I'm clamping it together so that I can shoot some 2-inch brad nails in, and what that's going to do is just hold them all together. And then I'm going to nail these two separate pieces to the ceiling of this drawer. And then what that's going to do is it's going to hold my spring clamps. And I'm using 1/4 inch material so that I'm not like over springing my clamps. If you use too thick of a material here, in time it'll wear out the spring in your clamps, and we don't want that. They fit in there pretty well. But with this one, that's pretty much the only difference I have in this box versus the last one. So with that one being done, I'll slide that one in there nice and neatly. Now these two were both 10 inches wide. The next two I'm going to make are 2 inches wide, and they're going to have some slight differences too. Not very drastic, but some slight difference. The difference in the next one, I'm installing 2 bars across the middle, kind of like what you would see in a closet, and they're going to hold clamps. And I'm basically taking my clamps and lining them up and see where they end up falling, just to figure out where I want to put these bars. And then measure out where they land to make sure they stay level and even. I'm guessing this goes without saying, but make sure when you drill these holes they don't go the whole way through. Then we'll go ahead and pocket hole screw in our last corner, which will lock those bars in place, and hopefully they'll never be able to slip out. And with that, we'll see how this one fits now. Now for the next drawer, it's going to have everything the last drawer had, except for at the top, I'm going to put in a shelf. I'm going to use a dado style joinery for this. I do not have a table saw that's capable of taking a dado blade, so I'm stuck with a choice between a router or my miter saw. My miter saw, with how wide these pieces are, is going to be the easier choice by far. Then when it's fully assembled, it'll slide in just like this. And then you just put a brad nail or something into it, that way it don't slide back out. After everything's assembled, I went ahead and tacked on a 1/4 inch lip just so I could stack some stuff in there and it won't fall out. And then I put a few brad nails in it to tack it in place. And here it is, the last one. Will it fit? Alright, now we're on to the final touch-ups. For handles, I'm going to go for ropes for handles. So I'm going to drill some holes at the front of each of these drawers. And I measured them out to be pretty close to center of the height of the door. That way you're evenly pulling through the center of the door whenever you open these drawers. And I did that because if you're favoring the top or the bottom whenever you're pulling these things open or even closing them, you'll cause it to tilt and wedge in there, and it'll be a pain to open and close it. So I shot for the center for these, and it worked out pretty well. So after I got the ropes on, the next thing I wanted to work on was alignment issues, because the bottoms didn't really line up every time whenever you closed the doors. Some of them were sticking out a little further than others. So what I did to combat that issue was I shimmed underneath the wheels, whether it's the front wheels or the back wheels, to try to get the bottoms to line up correctly. And that worked out pretty good. And you can't see them, so why not? Now it's time to add drawer stops. So I needed to add some meat back there for my hardware to hold on to. So I added this piece of plywood to the wall. So I put my hooks in these boards, and then these hooks will end up sliding through a hole in the back of each of these drawers. Then on that hook, I put a piece of wire that I carefully measured out and made up that will end up being screwed on the inside of that hole, so that it serves as a drawer stop, so that those drawers don't pull the whole way out of that closet and cause problems. So I took more of that wire, and then I made some retainers for all of these drawers, so that whenever you open and close the drawers, your clamps don't come flying out at you. They're screwed on in the back side, and then they're hooked on in the front. That way you can hook and unhook these things to remove and add clamps at ease. Before it was all said and done, I ended up having to put some paste wax on the drawer guides that are up at the top, and I even had to sand a few spots where the drawers were rubbing together and trying to pull each other out and back in. But overall, it ended up working really smoothly, and I'm really stoked about this project. I'm definitely happy to have all these clamps in one location once and for all. I have a lot more room in a lot of different spots where these clamps used to reside, and now I can finally find some homes for some stuff that don't have homes. But believe it or not, I have a long way to go with organization in this shop. So there is more to come, and if you want to see more builds like this, hit that subscribe button. If you like this build, please do me a favor and hit that like button, and then yeah, go back to my page and check out some of the other stuff there. I have a few more organization ideas there as well. But until next time, make something awesome.